Good. All right, so now I'm going to start my 4-layer cake. I am contestant 1610. Today's date is June 9th, 2021. Before I do anything with my cake, I have to wash my hands. So when washing your hands, you want to make sure you're scrubbing for 10 to 15 seconds in between your fingers and up your arms a little bit. When you're done, dry off your hands, and then with that paper towel, shut off the water. So now I'm going to start my cake. It is a 4-layer white cake with raspberry filling and buttercream frosting. So I have my cakes in the freezer over here. The reason you put your cakes in the freezer is so that they do not crumble while you are frosting them. So I have 2 white cakes here. So I'm going to go get a serrated knife so I can cut them in half. So now I'm going to cut my white cake layers in half so that it becomes a 4-layer cake. So I have gloves on because this is ready to eat food. So I'm going to start by just going around the edges. And what this does is it allows you to make a pretty even cut straight across. So as you can see, it is a little off, but it's pretty much halfway. So I'm going to stick this to the side. I'm going to take my next cake layer. And my cakes are a little soft, so I may have to do a dirty ice coat, stick it in the freezer so that the frosting can harden, and do another layer around it. So let me mark up the sides of this one. And when you're doing this, you want to try to keep the knife as flat as possible. So this one turned out a lot better. So we're going to stick this to the side. So now I am going to take my cake board. I'm going to stick that down. And I have my frostings right here already made. I did leave some frosting out for my roses. This frosting is just a little bit thicker. It kind of helps to get a nice form on the roses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my offset spatula and just take a little bit of the frosting and wipe it on the bottom. What that allows is for the cake to sit on it, and it kind of secures it. So I'm going to take one of my bottom layers of cake, put it down right in the center there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill one of my bags with, I'm just going to fit it with one of these couplings so that I can use the same bag for one of my colored frostings. So when you see the coupling, you just want to cut around it. And then you can rip it off and just push it through like that. You just screw this back on. So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna do a border around the cake so I can fill it and the filling doesn't seep out. So when filling a piping bag, you fold the edges down and you kind of cup it around your hand. So I'm gonna twist the top. And just do a nice thick layer around the edge of the cake. So I have my raspberry filling right here. I have a white scoop, and a white scoop is a pretty good size filling for it. So just gonna stick that right in the center. I'm gonna take my offset spatula and just spread it around. When you are putting filling into a cake, you do not want too much filling in it because that filling will cause your cake to be offset, so it's going to start to tip over. So now I'm going to stick one of my top layers of cake right on top of that, and I'm just going to give it a nice push down, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to take my frosting and just do a nice border all the way around it, and you want to try to get all the way to the edge. So if you mess up, you just go around it again. And again, I'm gonna do a white scoop. And when you use a scoop like that, it just makes sure that you have the same amount of filling throughout each layer. So personally, I like to put a top layer on the top. So I'm gonna actually, you know what? This bottom looks pretty nice, so we're gonna do this layer. And on this, I'm gonna stick it upside down so any defects of how the top is formed is into the cake. Again, we are going to do one more frosting ring. Perfect. One more nice size scoop of raspberry filling. So this side of the cake is a little bit lower, so I'm just gonna do a little bit extra frosting right there, just so I make sure that no filling is gonna escape. So now I have my 4 layers. So since my cake is a little bit crumbly, I am going to dirty ice it and then stick it in the freezer. So I'm gonna just clean this up real quick. So if you see your cake a little off center, just slightly move it around. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a plop of frosting right on the top there. And you wanna just slowly work it out to the edges. So this first layer is going to be super duper thin because it is just your crumb coat. So when your cake isn't completely frozen, your cake's gonna start to crumble on you, which is what's happening to me right now. So we did have some technical difficulties with cameras. So I had to put this cake in the freezer for a minute so that it didn't melt while I was fixing our cameras. So I'm going to continue dirtying icing it. That little bit of time in the freezer actually helped me out, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. Technical difficulties happen. Nothing you can do about it, as I would like to say. But I am still just dirty icing it because I would like this cake to turn out pretty nice, so as you can see, there's a nice thin layer of frosting on my cake. So I am just gonna stick this in the freezer for 2 to 3 minutes, and that's just gonna give enough time for the frosting to set, and we'll come back.
Go.
All right, so I just took my cake out of the freezer. So now I'm going to actually ice my cake. So again, I am going to put some frosting right on the top there. And I have a bucket of hot water here. I'm just gonna put my spatula in it. And that hot water just allows the frosting to move a little bit easier. And when you're frosting a cake, you want to have your shoulder over the cake, and that just gives you some more control. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going over the edges, trying to cover up any crumbs that there may be, and make sure all the cake is hidden. Sorry if you do hear some talking in the background. There is a class going on next door to where I am recording. The reason I am in a different location is because of air conditioning. And when you're making a cake, you do not want a super hot environment because the frosting will become too soft and you won't be able to work with it. So as you can see, I am a little light on frosting on the edge here, so I'm just gonna add some extra right there. And the reason I'm scraping the frosting off into another bowl is because there are some crumbs, and you don't want to put those crumbs back into your fresh frosting. So this is the last little bit that I have to do right here, and I'm just gonna completely flatten it out now, make it look nice. So if you have a little bit of lightness on the edges around the top of your cake, that is okay because you are going to put a border around it. You want to try to make it as good as possible, but if it is a little bit light, that is fine. Alright, so my cake is pretty good now. It's pretty much flat all the way around. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to do a white border around the top and the bottom of the cake. So the style border that I'm going to do is kind of like a she-shell. You go backwards and then you drag it back down, and I'll show you that on the table while I'm doing it. So we're going to just fill this bag back up. And you want to make sure that you leave enough frosting for your green leaves and your writing as well. And I just have a towel to the side so I can wipe my hands off if I get any frosting on it. So I'm going to squeeze any excess frosting so that there's no air pockets. And I'm going to grab it about halfway, and that just allows for a more steady pace. So I'm just going to go up and go up. And as you can see, you want them pretty much on top of each other. And what you're doing is you're going back over what you just did. So you're just going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, and down. And it just gives you a nice border around the edge there. And I'm going to do the same thing around the bottom here. Alright, so now I have it around the top and the bottom. As you can see, it's pretty uniform. So I'm just going to squeeze this frosting out of this bag. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to squeeze this frosting out of this bag. I do not need this bag again, so I am just going to set it to the side so that I can take my coupling out at the end and wash my coupling, and I will throw away the bag because the bag is a reusable one. And what I like to do is I like to keep my tips and everything near each other so that I know where they are at all times, because they are such small things, they are easy to lose. So I'm going to go get one more bowl so that I can have it for my green, which is going to be for my writing and for my green leaves. Now as I'm just scraping off my paddle attachment, there's the word, and I'm just going to scrape some of this into this bowl. What this is going to be used for is this is going to be my green frosting for my writing and my leaves. I'm just going to add a little bit more to my yellow. So When you're working with gel food coloring, it is a thicker mixture, so you really only need a drop. So we're gonna put a drop in there. That was 2, it's okay. It's gonna be a richer color. And 1 drop of green in here. So we're just gonna mix it around. So this right now is like a minty color, so I'm gonna add a couple more drops of green. It's kind of trial and error when you're using the gel food coloring. All right, so there's more of a leafy green. So there's my leaf green color. And then I'm gonna use this spatula right here for my yellow. So when the yellow comes out, it actually looks a little bit orange. But once you mix it into the white frosting, it turns into a yellowy color. So this looks like a nice pastel yellow. We may add 1 more drop. The color I'm using is golden yellow, so it is a more pastel color, but I just think that will look good as my roses. I'm gonna wipe off my hands again. All right, so I am going to stick these to the side. And I am going to take my sanitizing cloth and just wipe down my bench again. Try and keep my bench as clean as possible, especially because there is a lot going on it, because with a cake, you kind of just keep going until you're done with it, because the more time you waste is the more time that the cake sets and the more time that's going to start drifting apart. Okay, so on my cake order form, it says that it wanted a 4-layer, 8-inch round white cake with red jam or jelly, iced in buttercream icing, all borders and decorations in buttercream icing as well. And the sides they did not want combed, that's why they are flat. They want yellow roses with green leaves. They want about 3 to 5 sprays of roses, which just means a bunch of rows with 3 to 5 in it. And then they want it to say, "Congratulations, SkillsUSA." So I have my rose nails here. And when you make a rose, you want to start off with a good base, so just like that. And you want to make sure that the fat side's on the bottom. And if you have a good base and it starts to tip over, you can just kind of knock it back over. So when you are making roses, you're going to go from side to side, and you want to make sure that you're going all the way down to the bottom. So there's a pretty nice rose. So now with a rose, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to slide it right under it, and you're going to pinch it. And slide it off. And when you go to put it on the cake, you kind of want to step into the cake and lift up. So there's one. So I'm going to do the same exact technique again. A nice base. And I kind of knocked it over, so I'm just gonna knock it back and do the same technique again, making sure that I go all the way down. If you don't go all the way down, you're not gonna build your base. Slide it under, pinch it. Starting off with a good base. turn it. Perfect. So if it starts tipping over, just knock it back. And I need one more petal right there. So there's another nice rose right there. I'm gonna pick it up, stab it into the cake, and drag it out. When I mean stab it into the cake, you just want to go at a downward motion so that you can slide it off easier. You don't actually want to jab it into the cake because then you're gonna have a hole in your cake. So I like to just wipe off my nail every time I start a new rose. And the thing with roses is that base is what really gives you an advantage. If you get a nice big base, you can fix a lot of your mistakes. Like, frosting is very easily movable, so it will start to tip. So if you have that nice base, you can kind of just knock it back into place. Just like that. Again, just pinch it. And there's another nice rose. My scissors are getting some frosting on them, so wipe those off. So I am going to do two more. And when you're using roses, you want to make sure that you're using odd numbers. For some reason it just turns out better, so I'm gonna put 2 more right there. Odd numbers just look better on cakes usually. Nice big base. And it's tipping over, so just knock it back. So this rose did just fall. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna scoop it up and remove it from my cake. Just gonna take a wet spatula, scrape off that yellow. Wet it a little bit, just smooth it out. And accidents like that do happen. You just have to make sure you fix your mistakes. And especially with the heat right now, your frosting gets soft super fast, which causes things to happen. So you kind of just have to slow down. So there's a beautiful rose right there. Pinch it. And I kind of put that one on an angle. So now I'm going to work on my last rose right now. This cake has taken longer than I did expect it to because of some camera issues. So our last rose right here. Gotta get them both on it. And place it right down. So the next thing I'm going to do before I do my leaves, which my leaves can hide some of the mistakes within the roses, is I'm going to write congratulations Skills USA. So one of the things I like to do is I like to print out a font that looks good so that I have a reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch it halfway and stick the rest of the bag under my arm. So it is a little off center. But it's not too bad. One of my biggest weaknesses is writing. I have been practicing for a couple weeks now, and my writing has gotten a lot better than when I started. So now I'm going to switch my tip. So now I have my leaf tip on here. And I'm just going to pop some leaves. So there is my 4-layer white cake. When we get back down to my kitchen from this air-conditioned room, I will slice a piece open and show you the 4 layers. Now that my cake is done, I'm going to cut it so that you can see the different layers. So I'm going to go get a plate. And I'm just going to see, the different layers are pretty similar. And if you look inside the cake, you can see the same exact thing. You can also see the borders around the inside so that the filling didn't come out. So I'm competitor 1610, and this is my 4-layer cake.